I saw yesterday, I saw Monday, see again today, questions about whether or not we would turn to Jimbo Fischer. And I have, for the most part, dismissed those as not a serious conversation. I see where Dustin, amongst others, asked the question about that. Jeff, why don't you want Jimbo back? Did he hurt your feelings somewhere along the way? My sensibilities are tougher than that, Dustin. They don't get hurt that easily. I'm pretty strong. But I just think that you have amnesia. You have forgotten how things ended here. He betrayed Florida State, turned his back on Florida State. And I believe that he failed at Texas A&M despite having every possible resource imaginable. What about the track record of Jimbo Fischer over the stint of, say, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years do you find so appealing? Nostalgia. What once was often can never be again. Occasionally that's not true. But what people see is 2013 when they see Jimbo Fischer. They see some elements of 2014. They see the 29 straight. They see the unbelievable run from 2012 through 2014, and they say, it can be again, Jeff, but it makes them forget about 2015 and 16 and 17. Makes them forget that he was, I believe, 3-5 in the ACC that final year and 5-6 because he didn't get to do the last game. So he had a losing record when he left here. And then they forget that he got to Texas A&M, and by the end, he was responsible in 2022 for a 5-7 campaign and a 2-6 record in the SEC, followed by getting to coach 10 games that next season at 6-4, which is middling and not any better than the previous coach. He was a 4-loss coach the year before that. They were at one point preseason ranked number 5 before losing 3 straight games. Offenses were terrible, really slow. He was out of touch. No, I would just go by what the man was at the end of his time there when he was fired at Texas A&M and when he was out the door here and say, we can do better. I don't have anything personal against Jimbo Fischer. I don't. I thought that he at times was boorish and mistreated people and would be very difficult to kind of get a handle on in terms of who you were going to get on a day-to-day basis. But I shared a lot of really cool moments with Jimbo Fischer. There's aspects of that man that I really appreciate. We've had some private conversations that I'll hold near and dear to my heart for a long time. So there, he was Tom knows what I'm talking about here. He was a complicated dude. Things to like about him and some things to really dislike about him. But I think if you remove all of that and you just talk about the man that was coaching at the end, it wasn't good. He wasn't winning. He had players galore, and he still wasn't winning. And a lot of the stuff that happened at the end here left a really bad taste in the mouth of an awful lot of very powerful people at Florida State, and for good reason. Now, if he gets another job in college football and he is able to kind of fix some of those foibles and maybe have a different outlook with time to having reflected on the time away from the game and rectified all of it and did well somewhere, I'd be happy for him. I'd be fine with that. But good for him. Good for him. I largely root for people unless you're just a really bad human being, not just guilty of some, transgressions or behavior that are questionable, not just questionable interactions, but like if you're a bad human being, I don't root for you. Other than that, I largely root for people to do well. So if he went somewhere and got it together and they had success, like let's say he got back to West Virginia or something, or got a job at a G5 somewhere and took them to new heights and that little program did well, I'd be very happy for him. He certainly doesn't need the money. It's not that. I know he did an interview recently with Ross Dellinger. His actions are showing you and telling you that he wants to coach again. And now he's taken the next step. He's not just through his appearances on the ACC network and some of the things that he says in those appearances. He's not just kind of intimating that he'd like to be back in college coaching. Now he's doing sit downs with people like Ross Dellinger in which he is saying, I want to coach college football again. And I think that's because A, he's been away from the game, and B, he's 60. This is the last go around. There's not going to be too many more other opportunities. His name is still out there enough where he thinks that by promoting this desire to coach college football and the fact that he doesn't need the money, he's got more money than he or many members of his family could ever spend if they wanted to. He could be attractive for the right job. I don't think Florida State would be interested in that. I could be wrong. It would be a choice. I'll tell you that. It would be an interesting choice given all that happened at the end.
Yeah, the only way it fits is to your point about him making a lot of money and him being set, and you could get him on the cheap. That's the only way that it makes sense. It's the only major pro, other than evaluation and recruiting acumen, that still plays, I think. But everything else?
Oh, I believe he's a very good assessor of
100%.
Of talent and what a player could be.
I don't think that goes away.
Right. I don't think it does either.
Yeah. So he could still see that. But if you betray this program and you forget what a privilege it is to be the head of this program, how do you get to lead this program again? That's a tough sell. That's a really tough sell. Even if he came here for $3 million, he'd be like, wow, like quite a discount for Jimbo. I don't know, man. He turned his back on this place.
Well, but he also, again, he was 6-4, 4-3 in the SEC in 2023. He was 5-7, 2-6 in 2022. He was 8-4, 4-4 in conference in 2021. The COVID year, he had a great year. He was a 5-loss team the year before that. He was 2 games over 500 in the conference the year before that. It's not as if he went to Texas A&M and whooped ass. Even once he was given all of the things that he complained about not having here. And as is duly noted and correctly pointed out, he had elite recruiting classes after elite recruiting classes and lost with them. Lost way too many games for having all of that talent. Something was broken. Now, if you want to ignore the way things ended here and ignore this time at A&M and say, well, he learned from that and would do things differently, and there were other factors involved, well, then maybe you come to the conclusion that you want him back. I don't share that opinion. It's not because of any sort of animosity. It's not because of my feelings being hurt. That's not going to ever happen in a football interview or interaction with a coach. No, it's because of the record, because of what happened, because of the things that occurred.
You'd also sense a little bit more contrition rather than just the whole I'm on the dais and weeping and saying I love this place. Yeah, okay. And I'm sorry for what I did. At that point, I'm here for a little bit more of the discussion rather than this effort, I think, to deftly, I'll give him this, to deftly rewrite history on how it all went down towards the end. Because it wasn't just A&M. It was LSU the year before. And there was LSU the year before.
Correct.
So stop. Enough. You deserve to be celebrated for all the things you did here. But to have that privilege again?
The thing of it is, Tom, I don't know that he would be, I mean, there was some contrition in that, he has said that he never wanted to leave this place. To which you would say, BS, you tried to leave this place before you ever got the A&M job. Twice. Okay. You wanted to go to LSU. I mean, we know that. 2 separate times. He would say...
I think you have to leave this place to be able to go there.
He would say, and I brought this up yesterday, he would say they forced my hand. I had no choice but to leave because this, and this, whatever. His relationships with Andy Miller that went south, or, his hatred of Stan Wilcox, or whatever he would say.
Anybody who was against him.
Or anybody who stood up to him.
Was perceived to be against him.
Right. Or, well, I mean, who just said no to something. But, there are 2 sides to every coin, and that's what he would tell you. He'd say, look, my hands were tied here. I couldn't do what I wanted to do moving forward here. And there are people who believe that. I think he was right about it. Some aspects of what he complained about. It's just that it became so toxic. And I remember one time he and I were talking about the situation at Florida State, and he was saying that, they just make it so hard to win here. And I pissed him off because I quipped, except for when you won the national championship and went undefeated 2 years in a row. It was just sort of a, and there was tension in that. I mean, like, come on, man.
Well, that second staff couldn't recruit on the level of the first one. That's also part of the problem. It's not like he replaced those stone cold killers on the trail that put together the roster for 12 and 13 and 14 with dudes who did the same thing. They were a lot of mid-level at best assistants and coordinators. And Florida State at the time was still spending top 10 in terms of assistant coaching salaries. So it wasn't because we were cheap.
They still spend tons of money on assistant coaches' salaries.
I'm just saying back then, in case we want to rewrite the narrative here, they wouldn't spend on. No, man, enough.
Well, look, I've said many times he could recruit his ass off. He could absolutely recruit his ass off. When people assert that and say we'd have good players, I agree. We had good players even in those years when he began losing games. I mean, the team that went on the road and got humiliated in record fashion by Louisville had a lot of good players on that team. The one that quit against Boston College.
Yep.
Was it 35-0 or whatever it was at one point in that game? Or
they weren't taking naps. There wasn't a nap that was being taken on the sideline.
So, I mean, like that, those things happen. People do, they block that out of their memory of his time here. I think there's room to, and I've said this as well, I always feel like you have to make sure you fill in the blanks because others will do it with whatever they assume your position to be. I have also said before that there's absolutely room for bringing him back to honor the successes of those teams in the years that it's done. When that happens, when they honor the 2013 team or the 2014 team for their regular season undefeated campaign and ACC title, whenever they do any of those things or one of his former players is honored in some way here, right? And is rightfully recognized as an all-time great in the league or whatever it might be. And then let's say he wants to be here to be a part of that, to be out on the field with a Rashad Green or, you know what I mean? Like if that sort of thing happens, absolutely there's room for all of that. You can't not acknowledge those successes as well. I just happen to acknowledge the failures in the way things ended as well.